Hello ladies and gentlemen, today I want to discuss in detail my issues with BfA and why, at least for me, it's resulted in the largest and fastest loss of friends and similar-minded players than any expansion so far.
Yeah.
This video is for me. I'm often asked about BfA in many ways, which is normal with my job, and I often have to give short-form answers in the form of a live stream because, honestly, I don't enjoy making negative videos, contrary to some beliefs. I really don't. It's not why I got into this job. I got into this job and I got into this world because I love nerding out about World of Warcraft. I love discussing it. I love playing it. And I couldn't do that with my IRL friends. And therefore, I turned to the internet in order to do so. So waking up and making negative videos is not something I want to do. And
Speak
it's
for
not something
yourself.
I intend
I love
to
that
do
shit.
in the future. So I thought I'd summarize
I love talking
it all
shit
here.
about the game.
There are many people who are enjoying BfA, and there are many things that are of great issue to myself. I also want to mention that I'm personally still playing BfA, and with the upcoming Battle for Dazar'alor raid seemingly being extremely good, and enough of an incentive to keep me playing for now. Let's begin with BfA's iterations on Legion's features, the past expansion. At this point, it's common knowledge that BfA was released before it was finished. It had a shorter alpha-beta lifecycle than previous expansions, which was sadly coupled with Blizzard's refusal to communicate with the player base during the beta alpha cycle. In many situations, we, the testers, weren't sure what we were even testing, especially concerning Azerite armor. Azerite armor was released randomly without any information regarding what content or longevity or released pieces were intended to be used for or acquired from. Azerite armor is not the only example I could use, but the lack of communication was universal. The issue for us testers is that we were forced to fill in the blanks of intention and purpose with speculation that fits the facts we had at the time. Despite enormous efforts from content creators such as myself to do their best to give feedback, for all we know, we were giving feedback on features that were never intended to be used in that way, so we had to guess what they were. In Legion, the artifact system was met with skepticism when it was announced. The idea of every rep paladin having an Ashbringer, a sword with a great deal of legacy behind it, seemed ridiculous. And the skepticism was passed over for the most part when the weapons were put into practice. For many, a slight return to a familiar talent tree of old with branching paths was exciting on its own.
Even though you got
Not only this, but the weapons were also the source of the next level of character progression in the form of new spells and modifications to how a current player's toolkit worked. I'm certainly not going to pretend it wasn't an illusion of choice. Of course, the game was designed around all players having everything the artifact weapons had on offer.
Yeah, obviously.
But the process itself was decent enough to create the visions of what was to come, and receiving some sort of character reward for every artifact level gained. They also came with a tailored spec scenario to acquire the weapons, which were at the player's discretion as to when to complete them. Players could either unlock all their class weapons immediately, or save their off-spec weapons until later. Importantly, once the artifact weapons bonuses had been achieved, they were achieved, and not taken away from the player.
Unlike
the primary issue with the artifact weapons for players was they were separate for each spec, as each weapon needed to be individually powered up. It unfairly punished players who enjoyed the variety of specs their class had on offer. A shaman who raises elemental but heals in PvP would need to do considerably more farming to boost both weapons in comparison to a tank-only paladin who only had to boost a single artifact. Combined with the relic slots to boost the strength of the weapons, it created further issues for those players. Do I use this relic on my raid weapon or my PvP weapon? Again, giving advantages to players without those dilemmas.
That is
BfA, the Azerite system, with its Heart of Azeroth, was designed to fix this issue. This time, no spec-specific grinds. Now a player would boost one single item and instead use the strength of the necklace to power Azerite armor acquired through play. I would also add here that it solved the problem in Legion of inventories filling up endlessly with artifact power items, as in now, regardless of what spec you played, the power would immediately go into the necklace. The first problem here is that Blizzard backtracked on the original intention of artifact power, which is a ridiculous mistake to make.
Just like usual.
When coming into Legion, Blizzard was actively aware of the overabundance of proverbial carrots to get players to do certain content. All they had during much of Warlords of Draenor and previous was gear or gold. It simply was no longer viable to continually tempt players into all areas of the game via just those two systems.
Well, because nobody cares about the money,
then any new content is immediately pointless, which led to arbitrary currencies being developed to reset the individual player's economy. I believe this actually epitomizes an intrinsic mentality issue that has been epitomized in Battle for Azeroth. players won't do content without having a worthwhile reward for doing it. On the face of it, it may seem normal, and you may even agree with this.
I mean, yeah.
And it has led Blizzard down a long road of reward first, content later, instead of asking, would I do this content if it didn't have a reward? I can only speak for myself here, but when it comes to video games, I play for fun primarily. The reward is secondary. I know I've replayed multiple games over and over again and done many features of World of Warcraft because I enjoyed doing them, instead of doing that content purely because of the reward I would get for it. Each year I replay the BioShock series, despite it having no challenge or surprise, but purely because it's an enjoyable experience for me. Similarly, I intend to replay the Soul series over Christmas, despite having completed most of them previously.
Oh, really?
In terms of WoW, I've spent many hours doing Battlegrounds, and more commonly for me, farming raids, despite already having finished them. The thousands of hours I've spent farming raids with my guilds have been because I enjoyed it and not for the rewards. Yeah. You might suggest that if you have never seen my content before, that surely you're farming raids for gear.
Yeah.
That has always been secondary for me. Setting fun goals like speed kills and rankings is what I found fun for many years, as well as playing with fun people.
I've never
got it. The hundreds of hours I spent in Alterac Valley were done because they were epic and fun at the time.
I don't know
There
about
was
that.
no reward on offer for those
I would
systems that
AFK
I
in the
actually
tower.
wanted.
That's all
I'm
I
sure
would do.
there are many of you listening right now who can run a list of games that you have played repeatedly.
I would legitimately try to pay my friend Jeff in donuts to play my character in AV for me whenever I was asleep. He wouldn't do it. He'd just look at porn and take the donuts.
Repeatedly, just because they were enjoyable and not because of a reward for doing it. My point here is that despite the lead game designer saying that all of BfA's systems were designed with fun in mind first, then based on what we have actually gotten, it seems incredibly hard to believe. Artifact Power Grind and Legion had fun in mind. No matter what content your character would take part in and whether or not there would be a direct reward for doing so. If a friend's fresh alt wants to do some low-level Mythic Plus which has no gear benefits for you, you would still gain reasonable artifact power regardless, giving you some progression anyway. The same goes for PvP, World Quest, raids, or whatever content you preferred to do. I understand and I accept grinds are a normal part of an MMO that intends to have longevity, and I believe Blizzard made a great decision in Legion. Everybody must do the artifact grind. The game is based on it. So let's allow them to do it by doing content they love and also for taking part in content that they might not be their favorite or rewarding, but it might benefit others they like playing with to do so. Maybe, even if they do that, they will find something new that they thought they would dislike, but they actually enjoy, expanding that player's enjoyment overall.
Just like Island Expeditions.
In BfA, the decision was made to completely 180 this system. Forcing the grind to take place in very specific content the player may or may not enjoy at all, but will have to do if they want to keep their necklace level current. Further to this, the necklace levels are required to activate various armors are entirely contrived. It's punishing to some while being irrelevant to others. The Azerite armor has many issues. Let's not forget here that their goal of simplifying gearing in World of Warcraft has led to one of the most complex systems ever in BfA. But I'm not going to go into the traits in this video.
Look at these charts here, boys. It's like I'm in a stock market. Like if I spend as much time learning everything about the Azerite traits, I'd be able to make $1 million a day selling socks. Did I say socks? Let's just keep going.
The only counter is to make the main bonuses of the Azerite armor easily accessible with an extremely low necklace requirement. Counter to this, however, if you make the bonuses easily accessible, then the artifact power grind might as well not exist. These 2 points are at complete odds with each other and cannot reconcile. The solution Blizzard have implemented is to inflate the necklace requirements on higher gear. The difference between fully unlocking a Raid Finder helmet and its mythic counterpart is 6 necklace levels.
That's so
representing
fun.
roughly
That's
6 weeks of extra farming in order to unlock it.
6 weeks.
This has created a big disconnect amongst players as gaining necklace levels is an exponential system.
It's not
Each extra level requires far more grinding than the last. The combination of catch-up mechanics and a greater section of the player base being below the mythic raid level means that if they do not enjoy the specific ways of gaining Azerite levels, then they are free to do considerably less or none at all if they choose to, while easily unlocking their armor.
Yo, fuck that guy right there. Like, fuck that guy for real. I've been trying to farm pirates for weeks, but he has the mount and I don't have it. Fuck that guy.
Versa, acquiring better
this is
armor
one of the
pushes
new
you
ones.
more into content you may or may not enjoy for a longer period of time. Even though there is a catch-up system in place making it easier to acquire these required levels later in the expansion's lifetime, it is of little benefit to the player that identical rewards require such an extra distance to travel.
Well, of course it's a benefit
I have
to the
this
player.
gear now.
That means they get to
it
play the
being
game
easy
longer.
later is
And if they're playing the
completely
game
irrelevant.
longer, they're having
the
fun.
system is also
do you mean?
unsustainable long-term without eventually collapsing on itself. I'm sure
That's why
some
they
will
have a
say
new
that the
expansion.
primary and
Problem
important
solved.
bonuses are the easiest to get, so it's not a big deal.
Okay.
And they're right. The only shows how dumb this system is. Gaining
Yeah.
the maximum benefit early and the less important ones later again makes the necklace leveling system futile and unrewarding. Surely some players have already actively stopped farming AP, as they don't care for...
Who in here doesn't farm AP? I'm just curious. Who doesn't do it? Me? Yes, same. Like I forgot the last time that I thought to myself, wow, I really want to go and log on to WoW to farm Azerite power. Wow, I'm so excited and I really want to do that.
unlocking the less beneficial bonuses. When designing the AP levels for the next tier, Blizzard will have to settle on a level that's very easily attainable by everyone, or go back to step one of players having armor that's totally locked off. This means that the gap between the less interested players and the more invested players needs to widen in order for the system to keep functioning as a carrot to chase.
Okay.
And this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
In the upcoming Battle for Desolate Raid, a player who only does LFR requires a neck level of 40 to completely unlock every bonus that the armor has available. The Mythic armor gap has now changed to 48,
neck isn't even 30.
jumping to an 8 level gap from 6.
What the
The
fuck,
skeptic in me
dude?
might believe that Blizzard will no doubt use increasing amounts of Azerite rings over the expansion to conceal this growing gap going forward.
Wow.
Blizzard cannot win with this mindset over the course of the expansion.
Okay.
With the catch-up system, neck level 40 is easily attainable with a fresh ult, while 48 is weeks more of grinding for the exact same effects. Either at some point the gap will become so large as to be hilarious, or they will have to give up and accept that everyone can unlock almost everything immediately. Zero thought has been given to this system long term. What's even more...
The funny thing about this is exactly what happened in Legion. And at a certain point in time, artifact power was so high, if you went and you killed a rare buzzard, or you picked up a piece of shit that had an Azerite item inside of it, it unlocked every single ability that your Ashbringer could use. So we got from the beginning, right, where people were trying to farm out like 1 or 2 traits a week, to people kill a buzzard and the weapon is entirely empowered. Now, what does that make you do? That makes you think, man, why am I even playing the game until the end of the expansion?
More concerning is that the system is fundamentally unfun. No one wins from this.
Yeah.
Regrinding identical bonuses repeatedly over the course of the expansion just isn't fun. And Blizzard has explicitly said they're aware of it, and yes, it sucks. Further...
So the way that they decided to solve this problem, that we agree that refarming traits doesn't feel great, is they are going to make it to where you have to refarm traits. So they acknowledged that it doesn't feel great, and they don't have a solve for that issue today, and it's something that we have to simply accept as a downside to the system for other reasons. I feel like I'm talking about God putting original sin on earth and then having to bring his son and kill his son to get rid of something that he put there in the first place. Blizzard is God. What do you mean it's a downside of the system whenever you create the fucking system? Like, that you make the system. You just fix the fucking system or you change it. You're God in WoW. What do you mean you have to accept the downside?
It makes the perspective of the grind very broad depending on your point of view. From the perspective of a player doing some odd LFR and maybe some normal pugging and mid-level Mythic Plus, then the Azerite grind practically doesn't exist.
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, at the high end, it's perpetually slow crawl to get your equipped gear to work the same as the older, lower level armor you already have left behind. Combine this with the system of gaining AP being from game systems which you may dislike, and you have a recipe for disaster for many players. I cannot tell you how much my heart sank to see players praising this system as they were able to unlock the armor on their alts so quickly. It seems futility and the pointless nature of this system is actually something to be celebrated. Some may still not be clear on the issue here. If the AP grind is nothing that concerns you, I recently gained neck level 33, allowing me to fully unlock all the bonuses on my Azerite armor. What Blizzard would suggest should have been a fun moment for me was a total waste. I've had this armor for weeks already, and I've already cleared all the content weeks ago. For me, it's the final unlock stage, and it's useless. Moreover, Mythic raiding guilds are posting their expectations of neck levels to get for the upcoming raid. But instead of being motivated or something to look forward to, it's coming with a list of minimum things to try and make sure players don't burn out.
You have to farm 400 island expeditions.
On that subject then, let's move on to islands and world quests. Kulturas and Zandalar are some of the most beautiful zones this game has ever seen. The art team has once again outdone themselves in creating a living, breathing world that is a joy to look at. It's such a shame then that the entire world has been designed for nothing more than basic world quests. While the same could be said of Legion, a new expansion is the time to grow and iterate on a system, otherwise the charm is certain to fade. World quests are a solid idea. They were great in Legion, a notably great addition. But BfA's implementation is deeply flawed. Instead of thinking, how can we improve this system,
they think, how can we make it take longer? And if you go over to the World Quest in Dressfar, and you need to fill up the fucking bar, you've got to kill 150 pigs. If it takes them longer, they're going to have fun for more time. And if they have fun for more time, they're going to play the game longer. Boom. There it is. Blizzard should hire me.
They seemingly designed it under the idea that players could dispense with it when they had reaped the primary benefits, making it relatively short-term. Ion said so himself in an interview. Let's suppose then that that was always the plan. Then it's even more disappointing that the entire landmass is designed to be utterly void a few weeks into the expansion when the rep grinds are done. I know if I was on the world design and art team that had built this spectacular land, I would be smashing my office to pieces upon hearing this. At best, we can say the world was given just enough thought to tide players over until the next additional land can be added, which is what is coming. Only the idea of the players abandoning world quests is only true if you don't want to progress your character. World quests are one of the only two ways of effectively gaining artifact power on a regular basis. I'll get to Warfronts later.
I love how people keep referring
in comparison to Legion, the world quest system not only wasn't expanded on it, but it objectively became worse. Let's start with the rewards. They're considerably less than what was on offer in Legion, and the rewards on offer have also been reduced. Gold in particular is radically reduced, so much so Blizzard had to retroactively nerf the gold bonuses from Legion after the release of BfA, as they were so much bigger. Not only that, but for some inexplicable reason, various materials useful for everyone were removed, most noticeably Expulsum. Legion's equivalent of Blood of Sargeras was a regular amongst Legion world quests. Expulsum, however, is not.
Well, how can you give, like, how can they have Expulsum in the game and have it be a reward from world quests whenever they want you to use the Scrapper? See, guys, they want you to use the Scrapper. So, if you can get Expulsum from other ways, people won't use the Scrapper. So the way to make the Scrapper fun is to make it a requirement in order to get Expulsum.
Players to grind this resource out via absurd methods if they want to craft items. Crafting, then scrapping hundreds of low-quality items, hoping to get Expulsum, is utterly ridiculous.
That was a good stream
and should have been altered immediately. However, we are moving into the next patch using the same method again and no correction in sight. Not only that, the rewards for emissaries are underwhelming also. I'm intentionally avoiding Legion Legendary discussion here as it's too easy for people to use it as the entire point, but it's not. Opening the chest and receiving a variety of rewards for doing so. Opening the chest and receiving a variety of rewards for doing so considerably is more fun than just turning in that quest while knowing the one and exact thing you're going to get out of it. Now again, you are correct.
Yes.
Legion was similar, so besides the less rewarding nature of the BfA version, is that the only issue? And it's certainly not. It's baffling that not only was the system made objectively worse in terms of rewards, but also not a single step was taken to improve the system at all. I mentioned recently that being out in the open world is starting to feel,
they didn't improve it,
and there's no better word for it, stupid. If you were to ask me what the biggest issue of Legion World Quests were, I would have answered that it's not fun being able to completely eradicate all life from any area I was in without a given thought.
Yeah,
if I was asked to provide a solution, then
gear.
wasting resources on crushing group finder add-ons would not have been one of them. At this point, there appears to be some confusion as to what these add-ons were for. Some players even believe that people use these add-ons because the world quests were difficult in some way. I just said I was basically a god in the open world of Legion. The quest being difficult doesn't add up. It's not common sense. It's one of the most dumb responses I've heard from the discussion on this matter. The add-ons simply made an already trivial process faster in nearly all cases.
Yes.
Facetious arguments of a floating army of AFKers simply doesn't hold water.
That's actually what I would
existed for sure, but to pretend that every quest had 4 AFK and 1 person doing the quest is disingenuous in the extreme.
I never did them.
Instead, I would have suggested that an obvious improvement to the World Quest system was more variety in terms of difficulty, with appropriate level rewards tied to them. In previous expansions, Blizzard included a variety of areas with much more difficult enemies that were intended to be done in groups or by high level.
This was the area that I banished the elementals while the other guys were killing them, and I made the elementals kill the mages because I kept banishing the elemental they were casting on. This right here was the elemental plateau. I would go home and I would literally fast walk home from the bus stop to my house so I could wake up, or not wake up, get inside, and I'd wake up in like the fucking, like, what do you call those things? Weekends. And I would farm this one place right here. I loved it.
Characters. These areas wouldn't reward basic things such as gold, resources, or low-level gear. Instead, they were designed to furnish you with things that are more relevant when you have moved past that point. It's absurd that characters that have defeated a Titan-created epitome of corruption, or a creature so powerful it devastated an entire land and required the sacrifice of a lower to seal away, to go out and regularly commit genocide on non-threatening creatures in the world. Instead, World Quest could at least have added various higher-level options that provide useful things to progress players and for lower-geared players to group up and complete.
That's right.
Sanguicell is the resource required to craft high-level items. Those, along with resources for flasks, pots, feasts, augment runes, and so on, would suffice at a very quick glance. Not the things a freshly capped character would be too interested in unless they wanted gold, but vital to other players. Once again, no long-term thought has been put in here, just enough to keep players busy for a little while. You might also be thinking, don't forget Legion had PvP World Quest, Mike, and BfA does not. And you're right. So with that, it's time to look at War Mode. War Mode had...
Ian? Are we gonna have PvP World Quests and BfA like we had with Legion?
Well, you see, Jimmy, the thing with PvP World Quests is they were a very good feature for Legion, but what's really even better about BfA is we're going to have War Mode. So in War Mode, every World Quest is going to be a PvP World Quest.
Oh boy, I can't wait to pre-order the game!
Am I wrong? Am I fucking wrong, dude? There it is.
The potential to carry BfA all on its own. While some players will never PvP, that's their choice, but conversely for many players an entirely placid open world that has two sides supposedly at war also makes no sense. At the launch of BfA, War Mode was praised by many for being the most fun they had enjoyed in WoW for an extremely long time. It's with great sadness now that this is considered a total waste of time.
Yes.
I'm not particularly referring to the Horde Alliance imbalance. In fairness to Blizzard, they are putting in systems to try and not only balance the sides in a given zone, but also actively repopulate the ailing Alliance faction.
Yes.
But many consider it to be too little, too late, and it's a discussion for another time. The crime of War Mode is that once again, zero thought or effort beyond the initial system has been implemented. The initial joy of War Mode for many was the hunt for the achievement of Slayer of the other faction. Groups being formed to go out and attempt to gain the achievement.
Really fun.
In essence, the creation of war parties. For the first time in years, the world felt like there were two sides. However, as more and more people got their achievement, They found nothing else that made war mode enticing, and very quickly there became little to no reason to keep making these groups. We have circled back to the idea of rewards incentive to get people to take part, instead of asking, is this system fun? Currently, only killing people who have killed enough to have them marked on the map gives a single sack of varying quality items. There are 0 world quests involving PvP, even with war mode active to encourage it in any way, and the world PvP arenas of Legion are also gone. It's more confusing than anything that an entire game system was added to the game, and simultaneously, the day-to-day encouragement to take part in said activity was scrapped. There's no reason that the zones couldn't function as open-world PvP areas, with each side gaining access to ballistas and summoned creatures similar to AV to both balance and spark consistent gameplay that need reward nothing more than basic honor. After all, activating war mode is what you are opting into, the war. So where is it? A more realistic endeavor would have been to expect...
If you have a war, the servers crash.
Players to clear their PvE content with war mode off, then switch it on and go into one of the currently active zones and join in the battle for a while. I know I would have enjoyed riding a tank across Stormsong Valley or bombing areas of Drustvar. It has so many areas for fun, but just doesn't for some reason. I want to move on to the mission board now, which essentially sums up many of BfA's features in a nutshell. It's just downgraded, and that's it. It beggars belief that this was allowed to go live.
That's about right.
Its primary function, if any, was to supplement reputation gain, but basic math would allow...
Fucking relax. We're gonna play it after this. Okay? We're gonna play it after this. I want to finish the fucking video, then we're gonna play it.
I hope you like this
Blizzard
spam,
to figure out that the longevity of that purpose was extremely short, and they didn't even get it right. In Legion, the rep tokens from missions were bind on account, allowing you to speed up rep for alts. In BfA, they're bound to the character and still appear after Exalted, meaning a huge portion of the potential quests are entirely useless.
For some
reason, the variety of dungeon quests, raid quests, follower equipment, material bags, and follower customization for the open world have been removed, with nothing to replace them, making the mission table one of the dumbest game features. And yes, the mission table is a feature, it's just not a primary one. While Legion's missions table isn't fantastic by any means, in comparison it's the pinnacle of game design. There are more examples such as rogues gaining various materials to use in the open world and unlock artifact-specific skins, and it adds to more solo and class flavour. In fact, at this point, it's simply bizarre we stopped using the class halls at all. There is no reason this content needed to be extinguished. They simply should have been updated to reflect the current threat against Azeroth.
Just make it to where you don't
Personally,
require
there were plenty of NPC characters in the class halls that could have added thoughts to the fact that Azeroth is bleeding to death. The areas were always neutral ground, so the war is a non-factor. It would probably have even been more interesting to use the faction war to show friction between the characters in the class halls. Certainly the Night Elves being angry at the Horde character for whatever happened to Teldrassil. As the war unfolds, the tensions could rise, leading to fun and interesting events within these neutral grounds.
No.
You might be waiting for me to discuss certain specific areas of content, such as Island Expeditions and Warfronts. And I haven't done, and there's good reason for that. They're not designed for me, and some people find them fun. There are many areas of World of Warcraft that are not designed for me, and here's a list of some of them. WoW is a great game. It always has catered to a wide variety of players, and with that I absolutely do not expect every feature to appeal to me. In fact, most of them don't. I will say I wish they did have some appeal to provide more variety in my own gameplay. A large part of this is that much of WoW's content for the past few years has been entirely focused in providing more routes for players to acquire gear, usually lower than that of extreme raiding, so it's an understandable consequence of my own focus. I'm stressing this as I'm not complaining. Mythic raiding isn't for most, so it makes sense that a lot of content would be for other players. My issue is that not until now was I particularly forced into content I didn't enjoy for the foreseeable future, even in Legion. If I was to check the timelines in Legion at this point, I already had my BIS Legendary, and with that, my active pursuit of them diminished significantly. Chasing after Legendaries after this point was purely a choice. Artifact power grinding would still continue, but once again out of choice. I actually enjoyed unlocking all the abilities, and primarily, I could do it in any form I liked.
This is
The final
making me
point I really
depressed.
want to discuss is the removal of Master Looter from the game.
Oh,
At this point in
my
time,
favorite.
add-ons have simply recreated Master Looter for
Okay.
guilds while adding minor hassle of trade.
Yep.
The point that bothers me is that once again it has been confirmed, as it has countless times, that pandering to the most bitter and misguided members of the WoW player base has only served to frustrate players needlessly.
You've got these dog shit ass LFR crybaby dog shit dipshit bad players on the forums talking about how Master Loot was bad for the game. You click on their profile and they haven't even finished LFR. They have a real life. They don't have time for this. But they do have time for you to tell you what to do with your life. That's why I love seeing the general forums and reading what they say. They don't even play the game, but they've got a very strong opinion on it.
Skipping past the age-old argument for now, as you've heard them 1,000 times before, nothing has been solved by this change.
No.
Not surprisingly, in fact, it's made things worse.
Yeah.
As I said, guilds have adapted and moved on, as you would expect. However, those who outwardly advocated for this change have simply redirected their cannons at something else to destroy. There was a prevalent idea when the change was announced that it was to combat tyrannical guilds, abusing their players. Something that was no doubt happening on some occasions. I'm not going to dispute that.
Yeah, it happened
However,
6
the
times.
media focus on the discussion only painted guilds into a darker light than ever before. Quite a lot of players have never even played with Master Looter, and have certainly not been in an organized guild environment. And undoubtedly, some of them never thought that loot was being readily abused in guilds, which it wasn't in the many thousands of cases I talked to people about. Those players were then being educated on a situation that just didn't exist. If you've never raided before, you certainly weren't going to now. I would argue that if it was the community's perception of players, i.e. that all guilds are 4 or 5 greedy players abusing everyone else, then the removal of the Master Looter feature was never going to change that. Even if it did change, why would you want to play with those kinds of people anyway? For many who did argue this fact, no change whatsoever was going to get them back into raiding, and it hasn't. The numbers remain on a downward slope as it has been for many years. This doesn't mean that nothing has happened though. The same players who vehemently fought for this change despite having no intention of reaping the so-called benefits have simply begun campaigns to bring down the guild system as a whole. Never before have I witnessed so many people encouraging players to drop guilds or aim to scrap the guild system entirely despite the clear and present data of the benefits of being in a good organized guild.
What?
There are far too many bitter and twisted gamers in all games. Breaking parts of the game to try and appease those people has never been successful, but it only serves to create frustration for those who had their part of the game affected. Once again, fun was changed to try and help those who simply don't care. My summary here is BfA is disjointed, it's underdeveloped, it lacks vision. Given the lack of development in so many areas, some not even mentioned for time, such as professions, it would appear to me that an extraordinary amount of time went into the Island Expedition AI at the expense of everything else. It's the only place I could see that received so much effort. As new features are brought in, something else related to it was destroyed. Instead of iterating and expanding on what worked last expansion, all of those systems appear to be downgraded in one form or another, while basic philosophies are flipped completely, making them unworkable. And a headache for Blizzard themselves. Some would suggest that you cannot judge an MMO expansion until it's completed, which is totally nonsensical. And you would not apply that to any other product you purchase.
And maybe it'll be good at the end.
If you believe it's acceptable to wait 1 or 2 years and hundreds of dollars or euros to decide if it is worth buying, then I have really no worthwhile discussion on that. I certainly wish people would buy things from me month on month for a couple of years without complaining, no matter how badly I was treating them. Again, some people are enjoying BfA, which is fine, but I stand firm that the issues I've mentioned above are objectively worse than they should be, and the justification for it seems totally lost.
I oh my God. Why did they do these things? Like, I don't understand. McConnell, you still here? Do you have any hope that this is going to get better, man? I don't, man. Like, I legitimately don't have any hope that it's gonna get any better. And it's just so fucking sad because I don't see it like improving at all. It's so frustrating, but there it is. Like, it's just the same fucking bullshit that we've been dealing with forever, and I don't know if it's ever gonna change. Like, it's just, it actually sucks dick.